Today's episode will be sponsored by Oragel if Oragel actually worked, so it's not sponsored by Oragel. But welcome to the Life Midwest podcast. I'm Kevin Palmer, that is Wes Shirley, and we are together, what some might say, the Wonder Twins. Isn't that right, pal?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, everyone's calling us the Wonder Twins.
Really?
No, of course not.
I was gonna say I'm actually not aware of that at all. So, man, how's your week been, buddy?
Oh, it's been a little bit hectic, but I think life's starting to slow down. I can finally feel it. Ideally, I'll have some more time here in the future, but it's still been going along, still been doing it, as they say, as we say.
Yeah. Nice. I'm definitely feeling it as well. Feeling a abscessed tooth.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, but hey, I'm trooping. I'm here. That's why oral gel isn't working. And if you're listening, we're not sponsoring you.
Wait, don't they sponsor us? If they were to, like, this video sponsored by, not we sponsor them.
I'm saying I don't want to be sponsored by oral gel because it doesn't work.
Fair.
So other than that, my week has been extremely hectic. Just a lot of, we'll say, IRL things going on, and just juggling a lot of things. But hey, you know what? The podcast it's a passion point, and it's something that I'm excited to do every week. And it's I don't want to say it's a break from life or a thing to get away, but it's something that keeps me going no matter how shitty the week is going. So, and if anybody else needs to hear this, there's always going to be somebody who's got it worse than you. That's not to invalidate, what you got going on, but just keep your chin up. That's what I'm doing. That's what you should do too.
Yeah, gratitude training, I believe they call it.
Gratitude training. You know what? That sounds great. Minus the word training. I think everyone hears the word training and they go. Speaking of comparing our situations to other people's situations, that's actually a really great segue into what we're talking about today, right, Wes?
This has been floating around in my mind pretty much since I became an adult, or since I started approaching adulthood. Everyone kind of compares themselves to their peers, maybe even people who aren't their peers. It's part of the human nature. You see something, you compare yourself to it. You see someone, you compare yourself to it. It's a way to self-gauge, a way to kind of understand yourself. You're always looking outward. You don't get to see yourself from a third person perspective often. And one of the continuing issues I've experienced throughout my life is I just feel like I'm so much more behind everyone than most of my peers are. And whether that's true or not, I just have an anxiety about it. Like, I have to catch up. I'm behind. I'm late to the game. If we consider life a game, which some people do. And I spend a little bit of time externalizing those thoughts that I've been feeling throughout the last decade or so.
It's true. I think by nature we do compare ourselves to others a lot. I think I see Ashley compare herself to other women in their 20s and kind of where they're at.
Imagine you're playing a multiplayer game. It could be a video game. In this case, I'm imagining a video game. It could be a board game or a game of baseball, for that matter. What's important is that you're imagining a game you like, a game you're familiar with. I'm specifically going to imagine online video games. You can go ahead and imagine whatever game y'all would like.
Is mayonnaise a game?
It can be.
All right, I'm done. Continue.
So now that we're all imagining some type of multiplayer game, imagine you show up late to the game and you're tasked with winning, whatever that means to you. It's a pretty tall task, I would imagine.
Oh no, my mayonnaise is expired.
And you've already lost the game. That's so unfortunate. Anyways, so for those of you familiar with multiplayer online games, or MMOs specifically, imagine the game came out 10 years ago, and everything in games like that are accumulative. You spend time, you spend resources, and you develop things within the game that you can use for future endeavors.
Right, and there's always new content coming out.
Yeah. So imagine you start a game 10 years after it came out, and your whole goal is, well, I want to compete. I don't want to just be a casual scrub. I want to, play all the new content. I want to be competitive and like progress new content with other people who are competitive and progressing new content.
You want to be the very best, like no one ever was.
Yeah, like Ash Ketchum. And I want to be that way in life too, and I think most people do.
To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause.
You should edit that, like with just some heavy rock and roll guitar, and put that at the beginning of the episode.
No, I'm staying a cappella, bro. That's all I do.
Okay. It was good regardless, but a little bit of bass to it, a little bit of crazy guitar. We could really make a freaking top 100, top 40 rock ballad cover.
Editing the two of us is daunting enough of a task.
I could imagine.
So anyways, so you're in a video game and you want to be the very best, right? And you're joining, like, this game's already been out and been played by other people for 10 years.
Right. And all those people who have been playing for those 10 years are better off at being competitive, better off at winning, better off at insert clip of you singing being the very best again. And like, you have to compete with these people if that's your goal. If winning is your goal, and whatever winning means to you, in my definition of this MMO, you can't really win an MMO, but you can compete and be competitive and progress. And that's winning as far as an MMO goes. In life, it's very much the same. Other games too. Like, imagine you joined a baseball game as a team at like the bottom of the 6th inning or something. Somehow the other team played with itself for 5.5 innings or 6 innings or whatever, and you join late because that's a rule that can happen, I suppose, in this hypothetical. It would be really difficult to win that game. Not only are you at a point deficit, but you're at a time deficit too, and it might take a little bit of luck. It might take a heck of a lot of skill, but imagine you've never played baseball before and you join that situation. You're probably not going to win. Just like if you've never played chess before, you're probably not going to win a game of chess. And within our world, within this very real game of life, not like that board game life, like the real life, the one that is here in the Midwest.
The game kind of sucks, doesn't it?
I don't recall it. I know I've played it when I was younger, but it was just, it must have sucked because
I don't want to go on a rant and spend too much of the episode on this, but I mean, God, that game annoys me.
Well, it's no Monopoly, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's no Monopoly.
So anyways, here in this game of life, there are many who, due to lack of resources towards their development, arrive late to the game in some form or another. Resources could mean anything from like money to love, discipline, education, to literally parents. Like, 2 parenting resources are greater than 1 parenting resources, as the old saying goes, I think. Of course, having 2 parents who invest time into your understanding of things as you grow is nice. But more importantly, if you have like an extended family, a strong community, organizations that your family belongs to that help a child develop, influential individuals within extended families or networks who invest into your understanding of things, is probably going to be best. And having those resources in place is kind of what our society relies on to prepare individuals to join adulthood, the game of life's, highly anticipated expansion for anyone coming of age. But we don't really have that, as I'm sure a lot of people know. Talking with some people, I would imagine that there's some people who don't consider that. They take for granted what they have, and they apply that to all situations. Well, we live in America, the land of the free, you can do whatever you want, be whatever you want. And they don't take into consideration that they're practically a beta tester who played the game before launch even started, like before it became available for retail.
So you're saying essentially people who had these ideal upcomings and didn't really have a whole lot of these struggles or obstacles or hurdles, they're the people that are the ones who've already been playing this online game for 10 years.
Yeah, probably infinite things. I'm sure we could think of them all episode long, but like, there's certain things that you just have to know by the time you become an adult if you want to be competitive. And we can look at that just like the game launches for retail. There have been people who were playing this before. The resources are probably out there. But let's say you just never looked at the game until it came out. You saw it and you're like, that looks fun. So you start it, but you still want to be the very best because everyone does. And you slowly become discouraged because there's people who are just zooming around you, and you're stuck there being casual at the beginning or just playing at your own pace because you have to learn all the systems in place around it. And I think that translates nicely to life, because if you didn't learn the things you need to learn to become an adult when you're a child or before you're an adult and set off on your own, you're going to have a rough time, or you're going to have to invest a lot of extra time, probably time you don't have, into making sure that you're able to finally compete. You're learning the systems that are in place. You're gaining skills that everyone your age has already gained, regardless of what that is.
And it can be overwhelming, it can be overwhelming. It can be overstimulating because, yeah, like you said, Wes, you're trying to function as an adult, but you're also having to devote time that others aren't, playing catch up and, learning those skills that maybe you didn't not necessarily take the time to learn, but maybe you weren't taught them, or maybe you just for whatever circumstance, listed above, whether it's family, home, socioeconomic, whatever. I think there's a lot of different factors there, and we're not here to point out, one specific reason as to why it is. This is more about how to deal with it and how it's actually kind of a phenomenon. Like, this isn't rare, right?
Right. And I don't think the ideal here is to point out that certain people have advantages. I know listening to us talk, that might become very clear. It's obvious that certain people have advantages. I think the main takeaway is that some people have disadvantages, and maybe it's more than most of us think. Maybe some of us have these disadvantages. We're sitting here comparing ourselves to our peers. And, well, if I compare myself to my peers, I probably had a very different circumstance than they did at all points of my life, whether it's because of a knowledge deficit, a skill deficit, or anything for that matter, resource deficit. There are people who are disadvantaged, and certainly I'm not at the highest level of disadvantage. It would be insensitive to say so, considering there are people who are homeless and starving and just don't have time to learn proper things to quote unquote be an adult. They're worried about survival. And I believe we talked about this before on the show with gaming, even with Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah. You have to have there are basic human needs that you have to fulfill in order to kind of progress to that next level. That's actually a really great thing to apply here. And I will go back into our archives and pull out the link to the notes on that for anyone who's curious. I'm not sure off the top of my head which episode it is. Maybe I can look it up here while Wes continues, but it will be in the podcast description notes, or anyone who wants to research or read more into that.
I want to throw around the term generational wealth. You might think generational wealth, well, that's just rich people. That's families who have old money. Families.
Are we talking old money versus new money here?
I don't think we are. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because I would like to kind of change that definition of generational wealth to a little bit of a nuanced definition. It's not just rich people who've been rich for some generations, in my opinion, at least. There's more than money that goes into wealth. I think the term generational wealth can apply to having the benefits of an intact family over even 2 consecutive generations, as opposed to a single generation or more generations.
That can be a huge advantage. That can be a huge social advantage.
And then if you have an extended family with a community, if your parents are educated, they probably belong to a community that is educated. Your family members are more likely to be educated. If you have, let's say, your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle all have college educations, and they're relatively using them and doing practical things with their knowledge, they probably have things to pass along to you at any time they see you. You have questions abound because you're a kid, right? Everything's a question. What's this? I'm first encountering this. What this do? What that do? They probably have some insight, some valuable insight with varying perspectives, as opposed to, let's say, someone who lives in an impoverished neighborhood who only has a single parent. The parent's probably not there much because they're working to make sure that their kid's eating. And then the kid only really has school, which we know the downfalls of public school in this country. They have the internet, which, depending on how one uses a tool, it's not necessarily to their benefit. But there's just a wealth of preparedness, a child of those circumstances, having come from, 2, 3, 4 generations of successful parents. Maybe not rich, maybe not extremely wealthy, but wealthy in resources involving preparing the child.
Right. And that consistency to, from generation to generation benefits the following generation, because even things as simple as helping with the raising of that next generation and those children, that's what you're talking about, Wes, with that instillment of knowledge and being able to answer questions and educate and give brain food and tools and all that stuff that are going to consequently turn into a real adult life skills, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess back to my example of and I said it briefly earlier, I don't actually recall. It was something like, you would have a better chance of winning a game of chess if you had any knowledge of chess. So if your parents, let's use socialization for this example. If you were socialized throughout your early development and your parents, regardless of how many there are, it could be extended family, aunts, uncles, or your actual 2 immediate parents, if they appropriately gauge your actions within the socialization and they make sure that you're not just bullying kids and make sure that you're actually receiving give and take conversation and gauging your progression, you're probably going to have more confidence in your social skills as an adult. And that's going to drive you forward. Same with discipline and managing responsibilities. We can reach a similar conclusion if we had some structure growing up. You may be able to rely on those skills you develop to balance your schoolwork and playtime, or your work and playtime, and your other responsibilities like civic duties and stuff that you just can't help but doing, and still be able to have fun without blowing stuff off because you have more exposure to that. You had some type of structure growing up and you've been taught the consequences of not doing that. Whereas if you get left off into the world with minimal home training, you're not going to do so well. You're basically late to the game.
When we return, if you've identified yourself as late to the game, what do you do now? Stick around. Welcome back, everybody, to the Life Midwest podcast, the only podcast with literally less than the number 0 level of consistency, and yet you're still here. Seriously, why are you still here? Japan, France, Thailand, Colombia, Brazil, the United States, obviously.
Wait, we have listeners from the U.S.?
It's crazy. Listen, I don't know why you guys are here, but we appreciate the hell out of you. I know I left some countries out. I'm not looking at the list. I apologize. But just know that we look at that list every week, and we just bask in the glory of it. So if you're looking for ways to support us, you can always tell, your friends in other countries about us so we can, grow that list of countries. You can also support us through our Patreon, which we have. Shout out to Jerbadu at the $5 level, dating back to March 9th. Appreciate you, bud. Hey, we do have some new content that we're going to be publishing to that Patreon too, giving you more incentive to support us, kind of showing our thanks, showing our gratitude. Wes will probably talk a little bit more about it here too in a sec, but essentially monologue-esque versions of the podcast episodes. Not necessarily TED Talks, not necessarily late night talk show monologues. Maybe a hybrid of both, bud? What do you think?
Something like that. If you've ever seen one of those YouTube videos where they attempt to learn you something and they have just stock footage behind it and it's, a little bit of dry humor here and there, but these are social problems. It's like that, except for it's in a monologue format and it's going to be on Patreon, and we encourage you to check it out.
Yeah, and we'll be looking for feedback on that as well. So definitely look forward to hearing from anyone who's on the Patreon then, who who checks that out. Speaking of feedback, no new reviews to report this week. Still sitting at the 6 5-star reviews on iTunes. Hey, speaking of iTunes, buddy, I have some news for you. We did solve the Apple Podcast mystery.
Oh, great. What was going on there?
I'll tell you after the show, but essentially it's fixed.
Awesome.
It's just too much airtime to take up talking about things that, it's boring stuff. You won't care. You as in the listener. Wes will care. Wes likes my boring stories.
I do.
You can reach out to us at all of our socials. We're on all major social platforms at The Life Midwest. You can email us at support@thelifemidwest.com. Just drop a hey, ask a question, give us some feedback. Say, hey, I really hate this. Whatever you want to do. You want to mentally fuck with us? That's fine. We're here for that too.
Hell yeah.
Speaking of mentally being fucked with, I do want to talk about, I want to spend the last bit of the show here talking about expanding on what we've talked about today with that feeling of being late to the game, whether that's late to the game of life or something specifically in life. You feel like you may be missing out on specific skills, or you may have that feeling of, maybe you sat through this episode and you go, man, take that deep breath and you just go, if I had just done this a little better, if I'd taken the time to learn this, if I'd asked my grandparents more questions, I think there's any number of reasons that we can put the blame on ourselves. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say don't put the blame on yourself, because in the game of life, you have to control what you can control. But I am going to say that if you feel like you're late to the game, there's definitely things that you can do about it, and you're definitely not alone, or at least that's what Wes wants me to say.
You're not alone. We're in this together. Is this Wes's recommendations for how you can catch up in the game of life?
Yeah, but I wasn't going to do that whole epic segue thing that I did last week. I didn't know if that was too over the top or not for you, but I mean, I can do it if you want.
I liked it as just like a self-contained part of that episode. I think doing weird stuff like that here and there is really cool. I'm not so sure we have to do that every time. But I don't care.
We interrupt this regularly scheduled program to bring you an important segment on if you feel like you're late to the game and what you can do about it. Here's your host, Wesley Shirley.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on. It's just so great to be here. If you're listening to this, you're probably late to the game. Yeah, you right there saying you're not. I don't believe you.
Ah, shit!
and you too, the one out in the corner yelling, ah, shit!
God damn it!
And that's how it feels to be late to the game. And that's okay, because I have a secret for everyone.
You do?
The key to not being late to the game is just working towards it. Everything in life is repetition, muscle memory, and exposure. The greats are the greats because they spend more time doing things. They have more exposure to the thing they're interested in. They have more muscle memory because they use repetition to make sure that their muscles are in tune with like what their brainwaves say. Hey, arms, do this thing. And they use repetition to make sure that happens. We can apply that to everything. You might be bad socially, poor socially, rather. You might not be able to hold a conversation with people who you think are ahead of you. You have no confidence in yourself.
Stop calling me out, asshole!
All right, can someone get this guy out of the audience? I appreciate that you listen to the podcast, but Jesus. And anyways, so everyone is late in some regard. We can pinpoint why those reasons are, which we did talk on a little bit earlier in the episode. But realistically, we're all probably late in some way, shape, or form. Everyone has a baseline. If you're from generational wealth in the traditional sense, just rich, 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 and you look at other people of that same circumstances, you probably compare yourself to them, and you're probably behind them in certain regards. The secret is to just don't stop. Keep doing. It does suck that I'm now 30 years old and am just now starting to stop being a casual scrub in the game of life. I have a college degree and I work a job that I got hired. Someone hired me, which is crazy. I do a podcast. It's all things that because of repetition, exposure, and just really sticking to it, I'm able to do these things. 5 years ago, I would have been terrified. Not that this is the pinnacle, of course. And I said, I'm just starting to not be a casual scrub. Still pretty casual, still pretty scrubby. But I intend to every day work on something. I work on my writing every day. I didn't know many vocab words, no big words. I graduated high school barely with like a 1.3 grade point average. Like, it was pitiful. And for my early 20s, I felt terrible the whole time. I don't know anything. I'm stupid. I'm behind everyone. People are graduating college now. People have money. They're making triple what I make, quadruple what I make, 10 times what I make. And they're no smarter. They just have better skills. And I guess I'm going to do that. And that's what anyone who's been anywhere after not being anywhere has done. So keep it up. Keep doing stuff. Sure, you're behind, but as you progress further and keep working towards it, those people who are ahead of you are going to relax, unless they really, really, really want to be the very best.
Sorry, Wes. I just got back taking care of that heckler. Hope I didn't miss too much. The thing that I wanted to really interject with this was, I think it's important to not dwell on the fact that you're behind. If you feel like you're behind, if you acknowledge that you're behind or late to the game, as they say, don't dwell on it. Because that is time that you could spend on that repetition. Right, Wes?
Absolutely. Get yourself some learning. Get yourself some discipline. Get yourself some reason to live. Get yourself some life. Learn the rules of life. And just do it. Fuck you, Nike.
Just be doing it, just like we are. Just be doing it.
Just be doing it. You wake up in the morning, you're doing it. You go to bed at night, you're still doing it.
And I'm going to tell you something that nobody told us when we first started this podcast, and you can apply this to any walk of life. You don't have to know what you're doing, but do it with purpose. Do it like, yeah, I don't have it figured out, but you know what? I'm going to one day I am going to have it figured out, and I'm going to work towards that. That's different from fake it until you make it, which I think we do a little bit of, if we're being honest, but I think we're doing a pretty okay job, right, bud?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to fake it until you make it. No one knows shit until they've got exposure to it, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying, don't start out saying like, oh, check out my 10 million followers on Instagram. It's not, that's not the benchmark, dude.
Well, if that's winning to them, let them win. They'll just be behind when they realize that's not actually what winning was, because they spent so much time on that.
I like it. I like it a lot. Wes, who you want to shout out this week, buddy?
Shout out to mothers again, because always. Shout out to dogs with floppy ears. They're the best type of dog. If your dog doesn't have floppy ears, do you even have a dog?
Shout out to that heckler. What a dick.
Short-haired?
I'm not going to discriminate on dog breeds. I like dogs. I like all dogs. Are you a doggist? Are you can okay, stop the show. Can one be a doggist if they work in the dog containment industry?
So here's the secret. I love all dogs. But just like,
I know, but it sounds like you put like the extra jewels in the collar on like the Chihuahuas and the other little yippers that you probably don't like, and you probably give the beagles like little yarn collars that don't even do anything when they leave. Like, oh, he's so cute, doesn't know what he's doing.
No, that would be insanely irresponsible. I do, however, give much more love to the short-haired, floppy-eared dogs that come into the shop. If you got some long curly hair, I don't really fucks with you. You're cute. I like dogs, but like, you got a lot of hair in the way, and I just want to pet you and flop your ears. And if you don't have floppy ears, are you, like I said, are you even a dog?
See, with Mac being a golden retriever, I don't really know where he falls in that spectrum, so I kind of just want to cut the show here before I'm heartbroken.
Oh, Mac has very luxurious floppers, and his hair's not curly. It's just nice and flowing.
I know, but it's not a short-haired breed, you know.
Well, the only thing better than a golden retriever is a Labrador retriever, and it's just a short-hair version, right? And Kevin's heartbroken. Good episode, guys. Let's go.
Don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms at The Life Midwest. We try to post once in a while. Throw us an email at support@thelifemidwest.com. And again, shout out to Derperdue at the $5 level buying us tacos, which is exactly where we are headed after we finish this episode. Hey, folks, have a great week. Thanks for tuning in. Call your mom, for God's sake. And I guess your dad, too, since it's Father's Day weekend here in the U.S. So until then, take care, everyone. Have a good one.
Have a good